Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. And just like this show is running it back tonight, Inter Miami is running it back with Luis Suarez. As always, I'm your host, Scotty. I'm here with my co-host, Saur. Before we get into some of the talking points around Inter Miami tonight, how are you feeling, my man?
I'm in good spirits, man. The holiday season has started officially with Thanksgiving tomorrow, and I'm just enjoying the break off from work. And yeah, it's been good. How are you?
I'm very frustrated with Inter Miami right now.
I
And
thought we were going to wait a little bit before we start talking about that, but
no,
yes,
we're
go
going
on.
right into it. Our plan, because neither of us had to work today because of the holiday tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving. Our plan was to wait until Inter Miami published their roster decisions, which are due today, and then we would go live soon after and to talk about it. And of course, they haven't published them yet. And so here we are at 8 o'clock Eastern time, thinking to ourselves, man, that episode we had planned to talk about all of the decisions and Chelo Wiegand and Nico Frede and Matthias Rojas and all these big, impactful conversations that will impact the rest of the offseason. We're going to have that conversation tonight. And surely by 8 p.m. Eastern, we'll have that information. And here, as we sit, we still don't have that information. So we do have one bit of huge news that we should start with, and that is Inter Miami has re-signed Luis Suárez. That was the intro. And hopefully over the course of the next 45, 55 minutes as we're recording this episode, we get more information from Inter Miami about these roster decisions. But for now, let's talk about Luis Suárez. He had an incredible year this year. I think he surprised you. I think he certainly surprised Taylor Twellman and a lot of people that are longtime media aficionados. And he came out with 25 goals. Despite the fact that he was the Brazilian MVP last year, it still shocked a lot of people, how effective and efficient he was in front of goal. 25 goal contributions, an MVP caliber season. I think if Messi isn't also on this team and the entire Inter Miami vote is going towards Luis Suarez, he maybe had a chance to win the MVP, but instead, well, he's not going to win the MVP, but he had an incredible season, and we've now assigned him to an extension. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, this is, again, one of the cop-out decisions that Inter Miami had to make and announce, and everyone knew that this was going to happen. So the fact that this was the first announcement that they made, it was kind of anticlimactic because we all knew this was going to be the case. Not surprised at all after the season that he's had. The rumors were already floating around. Very happy with it. I'm very happy that Luis Suarez has signed on for another season. My qualms with this are very minimal. I'm not too concerned about how this is going to play out next season. I think he still has a lot in his legs left to contribute to this team, both goals wise and assist wise. The only thing that I'd like to see is whether he's able to sustain the levels that he had last season, and perhaps maybe take a little bit of time off from game to game and come off during games at like the 60th or 70th minute when we need the legs in there. But overall, I think as long as we manage him well, as long as we keep his minutes as they should be in terms of his physicality and getting the best out of him, I think Suarez is going to have a fantastic season at Inter Miami. This might be his last season at Inter Miami after this. So I do think he's going to be one for the history books for Inter Miami as a club and number nines that we've had here.
Yeah, he's sitting at, I think, fourth on the all-time goal-scoring list for Inter Miami after one season. I mean, he's becoming a club legend in that regard. If he repeats what he did last year, he'll only be sitting behind Lionel Messi. And even though the knee issues were obvious, you could tell that it was a strain on him. You could tell the acceleration is gone. You can tell the quickness is gone. He's still so good in those little pockets in front of goal that you want that back next season. And I think beyond that, it also didn't feel like it was deteriorating at any point. It was just bad from the start, and it never really got worse. And so I never got the sense that, he's running out of steam. He's maybe not going to be the same player next year. It feels like we're going to get next year what we got this year, as long as he's committed to being involved for as many minutes as he was this year.
Yeah, I don't think fitness itself is an issue. You get what you get with Luis Suarez. This has been the case for the last 2-3 years, I think, where his fitness levels are completely fine. His legs just aren't there in terms of the running and in terms of keeping up physically with the rest of the squad. But the thing is, it's not a lack of effort, right? He still tries on the pitch. And the most frustrating and yet I think the biggest X factor about Luis Suarez is he can score at any given point during the game, even if he's having an absolutely terrible game. Right? He's dropping a stinker. It's all going awful, and then he'll just come up with this moment of magic where he scores for you. And I don't mind that as long as he gets on the score sheet and as long as he scores that crucial goal for Inter Miami. And he scored what 20 odd goals this season. So there's no complaints from me on that end. And as you said, it just feels like he's consistently performing at a really good level despite the physical issues that he has. And as long as we learn as a team to mitigate some of those issues, and that would be maybe subbing him off a little bit early, noticing that when he's being a little bit frustrated, providing him that additional help, and just doing certain things to make sure we maximize his presence on the pitch, I think Luis Suarez can potentially hit higher numbers than this time around. So I wouldn't even bet against him scoring more goals the next season than he did this season. And I'm very excited to see what's in store for us with Luis Suarez leading our line next season.
Yeah, and like you said, consistency throughout the season. I'm looking at now. I don't think he ever went more than 3 games without a goal. Certainly, number of braces. He had a hat trick at one point, I believe. Maybe even 2. He had one against the Red Bulls. So from start to finish, he was consistent, and it didn't look particularly pretty in that preseason in Saudi Arabia, but by the time MLS play came around, he had gotten the legs warm. And as I said consistently throughout the season, he's not a runner. He's a dancer. And those hips don't lie. They're goal-scoring hips. And he contributed a lot. So I think this made a lot of sense. I think as long as he was happy to come back, this was going to happen. He obviously has a great relationship with Lionel Messi and Busquets and Suarez. And so it just made all the sense in the world. I agree with you. It's a little disappointing that Inter Miami announced this instead of all the other fun talking points that
because it's the most obvious one, right? We all knew this was going to be the case.
Yeah. So. I am a little surprised that this is happening before the expansion draft, because that will force Inter Miami to use one of their protection, like one of their protected players, a slot on the protection list for Luis Suarez. I kind of thought that this would get delayed beyond that. And so it hasn't, and here we are. Is it a DP contract? I think this is the biggest thing, right? He came on a TAM deal, and as long as he's on a TAM deal again next season, you love it, because he's possibly the best striker in MLS. Despite the limitations, and he's certainly not the most complete striker, but he's so good in front of goal that he's absolutely worth it if it's on a TAM deal. If it's on a DP contract and it severely limits what you can do going forward, that's maybe a different conversation. So maybe we should just talk about that, because it was not reported what status he's going to be on. We probably won't find that out until perhaps the contract gets signed officially, or, well, it got signed officially, but once reporters start asking questions, maybe not even until the spring. How much different do you feel if this is a DP contract?
So remind me again how the MLS roster rules are for this season. So we are allowed to have 4 DPs this time around. Is that correct?
No, you can have, well, all of these are subject to change at every single transfer window. So keep that in mind. They could change this offseason. But under the current guidelines, you can have 3 DPs and 3 U22s, or 2 DPs and 4 U22s. But yeah, this would be Inter Miami's 3rd DP, meaning they couldn't go sign a Neymar. They couldn't go sign a Di Maria. They couldn't go sign a DP center back, someone like that.
If I was Luis Suarez, I'm enjoying my football here. Don't really care about too much money, because he's done everything that he needs to do in the world of football. So I think he'd be fine and happy having that TAM contract and not being pushed up to that DP contract. He came in on a TAM contract, which in itself tells me that he's not too much concerned about the monetary value of it. But given his performances and how well he actually contributed to the team last season, I won't be surprised if there was conversation about pushing that up to a DP. I'd be a little bit more skeptical if he gets a DP contract, because I'm not sure spending that last slot on Luis Suarez is the best way to maximize this roster. And you said it, he's a brilliant striker, very clinical in front of goal, but I think it messes up a lot in terms of how we want to build this team up over this season, and the combinations that we want to create with this roster would really get affected if he's given a DP contract. So I'll be a little bit more hesitant.
Yeah, I think if you're from Inter Miami, if you're from the front office perspective, if you can rebuild the team you had last year and just trade out a few pieces for new pieces, but not drastically change the structure of the salary situation, you would love to do that. And a big part of that is making sure that Luis Suarez is happy with the TAM deal. Of course, as a professional athlete and having the ego that drives you to get to those levels, you can imagine that he came and he proved himself and he felt, listen, you have this spot, give it to me. So we'll see. I imagine that's not going to be released for quite some time, but
and he would be a DP on any other team, right? So
yes,
just because it's Inter Miami doesn't mean that. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's talk about Leo Campana, because they coexisted better than I think most people would have predicted this year. Campana ends up getting a healthy number of minutes in a world where I think going into the season, we thought there was a good chance they would move Campana at some point, or that he would be severely limited in the number of minutes he played. He ended up getting 1,500 minutes, which is not what he would have wanted. You probably want to get somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500. They didn't really coexist together on the field at the same time much. We saw it a little bit at the end of the season, but really they didn't play two striker system at any point. Maybe we see that this year. Or maybe they're saying this is an asset we have that has huge value. Should we trade Leo Campana in order to bring in international roster slots or allocation money or whatever?
Yeah, I looked into some of the structures that Mascherano likes to play, and I don't think he plays with a double striker as much. He usually plays a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3. So I don't know how much of that we're actually going to see. And as you mentioned, Leo Campana is a big asset to this team. I'd be happy to have Campana as long as you can actually fit the two together in a better way than we did last season. You're absolutely right that they coexisted a lot better than we thought they would, but I would want Campana to see a little bit more minutes now, because he just adds something different from Luis Suarez. And by seeing more minutes, it doesn't mean that he has to start every game, but just bring him on slightly earlier than just the 80th minute or the 82nd minute. And he's shown that he can actually make a difference in games. He scored a couple of late goals, and he's done well with whatever minutes that he got. So there's a case to be made that Leo Campana deserves at least a run as, if not the first out-and-out striker, but someone who can do a better supporting role. That being said, I think he's definitely going to be one of those candidates alongside Robert Taylor, who the team is going to look at, and I mean the leadership's going to look at and be like, this is a player who has a lot of value in the market. If we're struggling to maintain a certain if we're struggling to maintain within the realms of the roster requirements and rules, use him to give us that breathing space. So this is a decision that I think is going to come in slightly later in the window, where if and how we want to maneuver, and depending on how much we're struggling to create that roster, we might trigger Leo Campana's sale. He will definitely be on the mind of people when they're trying to figure out what the combinations look like.
Yeah, I have two thoughts on this. A, you have to wonder what Campana wants, right? Because I'm sure he's loved playing with Messi and being a part of this winning culture. But now it's been a year and a half. He's gotten that experience, and now he's turning 24. Does he feel like trying to get into the Ecuadorian national team, he has to go be the starting striker somewhere? Maybe he pushes for it. I hope not. And then the other aspect of this is, if the number 2 striker next year is not Leo Campana, it's going to be someone that's worse than Leo Campana. So if you're Inter Miami, I feel like, considering Suarez's knee issues and maybe not wanting to overexert him, you don't want to be relying on a guy like Schneider Borgelin to play 1,500 minutes. I know Borgelin's gone, but the striker we drafted this past year, or a young player or something, or a backup MLS veteran type player, you don't want that to be a guy you have to rely on when Suarez is unavailable. And so I'm a little hesitant to move Campana, just because as long as you have a quality striker up top, regardless of what else is missing on your team, you have a chance to win games because you can score goals. And I think Campana can do that.
If I was the coaching staff, I wouldn't want to move Campana either. I think in that second striker role, especially when you have Luis Suarez leading the line, who can be a little bit complicated in terms of his ability to keep up athletically. You want to have a second striker who's slightly better than your average second strikers, right? You don't want someone who's just filling up the bench space and not contributing in terms of goals and assists. And I think that's one thing that I saw from last season is how much Campana adds value to this team. And I would say he adds a lot of value and there's room for improvement. So 100% if it were up to me, I would keep Campana, but there's a lot of factors that we need to keep in mind. One and primary being, is Leo Campana willing to take that second striker role?
Yeah, El Bigote says in the chat that Joseph Martinez is available. I take him over Campana. I will just say right now, I hated every single time Joseph Martinez started over Leo Campana, and I would never make that trade ever. I never enjoyed Joseph Martinez over Campana for any point. So that would make me so mad. I don't think that's going to happen. Joseph Martinez is in the past, but yeah, I had to say that because I saw it. Let's get to the chat because we're waffling a little bit just because, again, this whole episode was supposed to be dedicated to the roster decisions. Here we are waiting for them, and I'm just refreshing
guys,
Twitter.
This could last 5 minutes. This could last an hour. We don't know how long. So keep it up in the chat and get involved.
SDE says Miami calendar is different than others. And that's what's happening right now is they're saying we can just not follow the rules that everyone else follows. I was watching throughout the day as Colorado and LAFC and all these other teams are posting their roster decisions, and I'm just waiting for Inter Miami to come out. It's just not.
That's the thing, right? As long as they publish it to the MLS, as long as they've announced their decisions to the MLS, they don't have to make it public for another 2 days or 3 days or however long they want. They might not even publish it before the season starts. So the ball's in their court, man. We're just here playing the waiting game.
Yeah. Icom says maybe they plan to not announce it publicly for a couple of days. As long as it's presented to MLS tonight, then they're good.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was telling Saur before. I think they got their publicity for the day by signing Luis Suárez, and they don't feel they need to do anymore.
And they're going to squeeze it because they know everyone like us is waiting like a fool for them to announce it. So they're just going to milk it as long as they can.
I did see Alex Winley post on Twitter her waiting, and I was like, okay, at least we're not the only ones doing this right now.
We're not the only ones at all. Yeah.
Yeah. Jay says, when does Miami have to make official their roster decisions? Today. And then as far as protecting players from the expansion team draft, that I believe is not for another week or a couple more days. So the expansion.
As long as you protect Yannick Bright, man, I don't want to see him leave.
Yeah, could you imagine? Anything else on Luis Suarez? I mean, he was very good this year. He feels like he's at the age where he's not going to get less athletic or dramatically less athletic, and it's not going to make him an incompetent player. So I think he's just going to be able to go for as long as he wants to put in the physical work of being a professional. And if that's the case, next year, the following year, I mean, he could just stay as long as he's having fun. And I think as long as he's putting in 25 goals a year, Inter Miami's going to keep him, right?
Yeah. Can I put you a bit on the spot?
Yeah.
And ask you a question? What was your favorite Luis Suarez moment from the season?
You know what? Tell me yours, and I'm going to go back and look at his goals and give you a good, my real answer.
I told you I'm putting you on the spot. You can't do the same to me. You know what my favorite Luis Suarez moment was? And again, my memory is hazy. I have a memory of a goldfish, so correct me if I'm wrong. But it was when Brad Guzan was floundering in goal like a goldfish, struggling to get up, and Luis Suarez was berating him as Inter Miami had scored and was getting back into the game against Atlanta. I believe that was the final Atlanta game, and that was an absolutely hilarious moment.
Favorite moment.
That was my favorite moment. I could not stop laughing when that happened. That was absolutely wild.
He had 2 goals in the first game, the third game of the season against Orlando City that we won 5-0. And they were both in the first 12 minutes. And so Orlando City was the preseason favorites to be the supporter shield. Everyone thought they were building a juggernaut. They had just brought in Luis Muriel, who was supposed to be this transformative DP for them. And Inter Miami, after coming off a kind of a poor showing at LA, at the Galaxy the week before, just jumped all over Orlando. And both goals were Luis Suarez, I think both from Julian Gressel too. He had a goofy goal.
Just to that point with that goal against Orlando, that was a bit of a marker as well that Luis Suarez is who we signed him to be. So that in itself was a very significant and a symbolic game for him to mark his territory here.
Yeah, I remember we had conversations in that midweek about whether it was time to give Campana a start because Suarez, even though I was so confident it was going to come eventually, it just looked so poor in the preseason and in the first couple games that I thought maybe it was time to give Campana a start. And obviously Suarez proved us wrong. He had that really goofy goal against DC, which was pretty fun.
Yeah.
I'm just looking through his goals. He had a hat trick against the Red Bulls. He had one at Montreal. He had 2 goals right before half when we were losing 2-0. And then he scored 2 right before the half, or at least he scored 1 right before the half to equalize to help us sort of take over that game. He had a couple of braces right after the Leagues Cup too, that carried us for a little bit. So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of good Suarez moments.
Yeah, he was a positive influence on our season.
Yeah. Neymar next.
Why not, man? Why not?
Could be fun. I will say, I think he's going to
okay.
Santos. I think he's going
here's the thing, right? Any announcement, they started off hot and heavy by giving us the Luis Suárez announcement. Any announcement after this needs to be better than the next one. They just need to keep on going higher and higher and higher. So bring me everyone. Bring me Neymar. Bring me Pogba. Bring me that Messi contract renewal till 2027. Give me the good news one after the other, because let's be honest, we as Inter Miami fans are sitting here with our butts on our hands because we thought we would be in the playoff finals watching our team still playing. And here we are trying to make conversation about roster decisions of all things. So the team needs to make it up to us.
Yeah, and worst of all, Orlando City's still in it. Okay, let's get to the next talking point.
We got absolutely cooked by Orlando fans on Twitter, by the way, when you posted that. Because A, they won, which is not ideal, and B, Inter Miami is nowhere near the playoff picture right now. So we got cooked.
Yeah. Okay, so Luis Suarez gets his new contract extension. Another big player for Inter Miami. Rumors that he's working on a contract extension. That's Lionel Messi. Another player that's not a huge surprise. He is under contract for next year, so there's no hurry. He's not going to be a free agent. There's no rush. But he has, I believe, an option for 2026, or it just becomes a free agent. And so the idea with this is the new contract will cover both this coming year and the next year. So he'll be under contract through 2026. Jorge Mas last week at the press conference said that they're working with Messi. They're very confident he's going to be here in 2026. It's part of Miami Freedom Park opening the stadium and selling that out, season tickets and all that stuff. So they were very confident that he was going to be around in 2026. I didn't think that meant that they were already working on the extension. But if we get Lionel Messi locked down for another year, I would love that because you're just eliminating the uncertainty. I'm thinking back to his last year in Paris, and there was 6 months before his contract expired, Fabrizio Romano tweeting out he's on the verge of signing a new contract with PSG. Those types of conversations were happening. But as he got towards the end, he got a little frustrated and decided maybe I shouldn't come back to PSG. And so if Inter Miami lets the contract run down, you never know what's going to happen. Just get him signed now and have the next 2 years. And then you know what your window is with Lionel Messi. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it's becoming more and more clear as we're coming to that decision point of whether or not to extend Lionel Messi. I don't even know if that's a decision in itself, but it's becoming more and more
whether
clear
he wants to extend with us.
Yeah, whether he wants to extend with us or not. Sorry, that's a better way to frame it. But it feels like he's going to end his career, at Inter Miami, and this is going to be his last club. It's just a matter of when and not if. I fully expect him to be an Inter Miami player until 2026. This project is Lionel Messi, especially with all the decisions that are being made recently. Very excited for that. And as you said, get it out of the way early, lock that in because you don't want any complications towards the end. And honestly, it's good to get these decisions that are somewhat obvious but very crucial to the squad out of the way, right? Get them done, get them signed on, and then you can focus on building the rest of the roster around him because it's going to give you a sense of certainty. And also for the incoming transfer window, it tells players that we're pursuing that, listen, Messi's going to be here till 2026. This is a long-term project that we're invested in, that we're heavily going to invest in, and it's just another attraction for some of these players to come and play with Lionel Messi. So having that certainty is going to be really crucial in building out the rest of the squad.
Yeah, you put it well, if you know you have him for the next 2 years, you can recruit players with them having confidence that he's going to be there for the next 2 years. So that's big. And maybe that's the reason why you want to do this at the beginning of the offseason, is so that you can go to, whether it's Di Maria or whoever, and say, listen, you're going to sign a 2-year contract and Messi's going to be here the whole time. It's not going to be he's here for 6 months, or you're here for 6 months and then he leaves at the end of 2025. That's not what's going to happen. And so maybe that's the reason why they want to get this done early. And listen, we know Messi and his group are instrumental in what Inter Miami wants to build and what the future should look like with Inter Miami. And he's probably going to be a part owner at some point. Raul Sanllehi, he has those connections. They're going to want to maximize this window. And so if Messi and the team feel like him getting pen to paper on this now helps them for next season, then it makes sense to do.
There's also another element to this, right? If he signs, if this is extended, it's going to be till 2026 December, I believe, which is another 2 years from now. And I don't expect Messi to continue to play beyond that. I think he might want to try and play in the World Cup, but after that, I think he's going to, if not completely stop playing, he's going to take a step back from being a first team player. I think 2 more years of his prime football, and then after that it's going to be a little bit of a different phase for Messi that we see. And this gives us a bit of a gap to figure out what the succession plans look like, what life into Miami after Lionel Messi is going to look like. So if we know for certain that he's going to stick around to 2026, we can start initiating that succession plan come 2025 December, and just keep that in mind as we're moving forward in terms of creating the rest of the stuff.
I feel the opposite. I think it's naive to think that way. If Messi decides after the World Cup, you know what, maybe I'm coming to a close here, then that could end up being what happens. But I think those are the decisions that are going to be made around the summer of 2026. I don't think we're anywhere close to having that locked in at all. And so maybe that ends up being true, but I think it's premature to make plans in that way, because listen, Messi's going to be able to stay here as long as he wants to. And if he's having fun and he's with his friends and he's hanging out and he's winning and he's playing well and he doesn't feel like it's a physical toll he doesn't want to do, like, he's going to keep playing as long as he wants to. So I don't think we're in that conversation yet. I did want to give credit to Uriel Ayu and Nico Shira, two journalists who I'm not super familiar with, for sort of breaking that story before it sort of made the rounds. Michelle Kaufman, I was listening to her podcast this morning, and she says that there's a rumor going around Inter Miami's world that they're going to make a trip. It's not finalized, but they're planning to make a trip to Brazil in the preseason for a friendly, preseason friendly. We did the whole world tour last year. We went to the Middle East. We went to East Asia. That's not what's going to happen. Jorge Mas confirmed that whatever they do in preseason is going to be a different setup. They're going to want to test themselves, but they're not going to want to have this huge festival of performances in pink. A trip to Brazil or a trip to South America, play 1 or 2 games, fly back, play 1 or 2 games at Chase Stadium, and then get ready for that first CONCACAF Champions Cup game. That feels like the preseason that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think keep it light. You don't want to overexert your players. I didn't have too much of an issue with the World Tour that we did last season in terms of the setup, but I do think it was very tiring for the players. It didn't affect our performances, but it took a toll. It always takes a toll when you're traveling this much. And I think keeping it local, keeping it within the North American, South American continents is going to be good. Challenge yourself against some of these tough teams in South America. That, I think, in itself is a big test. It'll be good to see how Mascherano deals with some of these tougher teams in South America. Prepare yourself for the Champions Cup. And yeah, I don't think, given how much this team has played together already this season, I don't expect too much upheaval of the squad. And a lot of these players, this is going to be their second preseason with us. So I don't think we need to overextend ourselves in terms of doing a full world tour. So I'm happy that's the case. And that's the decision the leadership has made, because you can get the same amount of preparation staying local and staying within, the confines of North America, South America. You don't need to go all the way out to Asia to get the experience.
Yeah, and obviously the Asia trip was a financially motivated trip,
Yeah.
but they also played at El Salvador in the preseason last year. And I clearly remember that thinking this is a great idea because it's going to prepare you if you have to go on the road in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. It was them saying, let's go get a little bit of experience on the road in CONCACAF. If they had to go to the Dominican Republic or if they had to go to Honduras or, you know, somewhere for a road game that would be in a difficult environment, especially a bad pitch. They wanted to get a feel for what that was like, especially the players that haven't played in CONMEBOL. Guys like Sergio Busquets have never played on that type of field before. And so getting those guys that experience, I thought was something they really tried to do with that El Salvador match. Backfired because we had an ACL and a hernia. But I can imagine them trying to do something similar this preseason, preparing for a major tournament they're going to have later that season by scheduling some preseason friendlies that make a ton of sense. Palmeiras gonna be in the Club World Cup. Flamengo, Fluminense gonna be in the Club World Cup. River Plate, Boca Juniors, if they extend it, maybe they play one game in Brazil, one game in Argentina. Those are Club World Cup style teams. And if you can get a game with them, preseason friendly or not, you're going to get on the field with these talents and you're going to give yourself an idea where you're not going to get the lowered expectations of what MLS teams are. You're going to get the higher expectations and the higher talent level and the higher athleticism and technical ability of a Palmeiras. That is going to give you a entry point so that you know what you can look forward to when you get to the Club World Cup. So that to me makes a lot of sense.
And they will be in the middle of their season, so they'll be a little bit sharper, a little bit more prepared. I think.
No. It'll be preseason in Brazil.
If we play a Mexican team, they probably will be. But regardless, I thought that might be a consideration as well. But yeah, new opposition to challenge yourself against, opposition that we're probably going to see, or a similar kind of opposition we're going to see in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, in the Club World Cup. So I think definitely a good idea, but also don't want to overextend yourself in terms of flying too many places. So I'm happy with that decision.
Yeah, let's get back to the chat because, again, we're procrastinating here, hoping that these decisions will come out.
It's probably not happening tonight, man. I'm constantly refreshing Twitter and I don't see any updates. So it is what it is.
Farzad said, maybe we can do a little preview. Farzad said we need a center back. A couple of the decisions that I think we were expecting tonight were about Sergei Christoph, who is a center back on a high wage, Nico Freire, who's a center back on a high wage. Two players that already take up a significant portion of the cap, and you can just get them off the roster tonight. All of a sudden, you have a huge amount of flexibility to go sign two new high-quality center backs, and that doesn't take away Toto Aviles. It doesn't take away David Martinez. And so all of a sudden, if you're dealing with four guys at that level, you feel very comfortable with what you're going to get defensively. That was the type of conversation we were hoping to be having tonight, but here we are. Lots of people talking about wanting Di Maria over Neymar. Is that how you're feeling?
I would actually love him with the form that he is. I think he had a hat trick of assists recently. He's been playing so well, man. He's about to surpass Cristiano Ronaldo in terms of assists in the UCL. And for how old he is, I think he's 37, if I'm not mistaken. He's been playing really well. And I would love to see him in that starting lineup because I think he adds some really good quality up front that that connection with Messi and his Argentinian connection and just the quality that he brings is world class. So have that in our front line, it's going to be fantastic, right?
Yeah. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think he wants to come here. I think he's had two chances. Over the last 2 summers, he could have come either year. And he decided not to. He decided to sign with Benfica. And you understand why. Benfica's paying him more than Inter Miami could. But I think if he really wanted to be here and he really wanted to be with Messi and friends, he already had 2 opportunities and he turned it down both times. So I don't think he really
here's a question. If that was not a consideration, if you had to pick between 2 players, who would you as a fan of Inter Miami and as a potentially, let's put you in the coaching staff role, would you prefer Neymar or would you prefer Di Maria?
So, excellent question. I think I would prefer Neymar because he's the bigger name and he's the more talented player. And even though Di Maria probably fits better with Messi and they probably have better chemistry, I'm just like I'm into the fun factor, the excitement factor. I'm not even saying that Di Maria wouldn't be a better option for this team. I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying I think Neymar would be more fun, more exciting, more adventurous, and more splashy. So I'm
Well,
like,
guys, I'm just glad that Scotty is not the coach of Inter Miami here. If I was a Twitter troll, I'd be calling your ball knowledge very poor right now.
yeah, I mean that's fair. I think that would be more fun. That's all. But I also think having Di Maria would
It'd be
would
fun
be
for two
awesome.
days, and then you'd be
I
like,
also
"Why is
think
he injured?"
I think Di Maria not wanting to come turns me
Yeah,
off to him.
that sounds a little
Like
bit. Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like I think Neymar
no, for sure.
would like to come. You know what I mean? So I think that also goes into it. LB Gote says I
Also,
think. Go ahead.
sorry, I was gonna say, as a Man United fan, I have a history with Di Maria, and I'm not particularly happy with the way he talks about Man United as a club. So I'm not sure what I'll think if he joins into Miami. I will support him, but probably very reluctantly.
Yeah, I think you said the same thing about Luis Suarez, and then all you did was praise him for the last 8 months.
Hey, Luis Suarez scored goals. Just because he's a Scouser doesn't mean that I can't get behind him scoring goals for Inter Miami. Okay.
LB Gote says, I think Suarez should be considered as a super sub, not a starter this upcoming season. I don't think his knees can handle it game after game. One of the things that we had hesitancy over, not complaints, but hesitancy over, was it did feel like there were a lot of times where Campana could have come on in the 60th minute and provided energy, defensive support, pressing, and he's a drop off in talent, but it's not like you're putting a player who can't play the position. And we never did it because that last late goal from Suarez could be everything. Do you think that Mascherano or a year older, or now that he's settled into the team and he's conquered the league in a way that he feels confident about, do you think there's any chance that Suarez has a little bit lesser of a role next season?
I think that should be the case, man. I said it at the very start of the podcast as well. We need to mitigate some of the negative, I don't want to say negative aspects, but some of the average aspects of having Luis Suarez in the team, because you can see at times when he's not having the best of games, he gets frustrated and he gets very angsty, and that sort of trickles down to the rest of the team. Obviously, he tapers out towards the end of the games, and not due to lack of effort, but just his inability to be athletic towards the end, especially when we need good counter-attacking options, sort of plays against Inter Miami. So I would 100% try and mitigate some of that by taking him off at the right time. There are certain games when you want to keep him on. When he's on fire, you want to keep him on. But there are certain games, and I could probably, if I go back and look, I would be able to name a few games, like that New York City FC game. I would take him off, put Campana on, because sometimes you have him playing slightly in his own head. So,
yeah, I haven't watched him play a game in a couple of weeks now, but it did feel like in my head, it wasn't that he slowed down at the end of the games. I felt he was very consistent. It's just that the other team started to slow down and he couldn't take advantage of it like fresh legs could. And I think that was, to me, always the thing.
Yeah.
Stan C says Neymar is too injury prone and will go buck wild in Miami. So it's a no for me. Yeah, I mean, maybe. Jay says, how telling that it was Sanyehi and not Chris Henderson who was in the photo with Suarez resigning. That used to be Henderson. Listen, it's on our bingo card that Chris Henderson's going to leave.
I laughed because Jorge Mas said that Henderson's still here. And it almost felt like he said it in a manner that's like, okay, he's still here, but he's going to leave. So it just feels like inevitable soon enough.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I mean, when he leaves, we'll probably talk about him. But
sorry to cut you off there, but going back to our bingo cards, have we got a hit yet?
We were thinking today was going to be I was thinking today was going to be the big day that we could do an update. But
was Suarez on our list? I don't remember.
Oh yeah, I think he was.
You should check. Yeah,
I'll check right now. El Bigote says we need to pull Murillo and Ilie Sanchez from the free agent market. Solid subs for center back and a CM. Yeah, those guys are going to be really expensive, and especially Sanchez is kind of on the older side. I don't know if I saw some people talk about that, but I don't know if I love that idea.
Yeah, no, I've heard a couple of things, rumors floating around that we should probably go in for them, but I don't know how viable that's going to be financially. So we'll see. I do
By the
think
way,
we are going to be in for a midfielder and a couple of centre backs, because that's something that I think I've heard a couple of times now that those are the positions we're targeting. So if that's the case, I'll be a little bit more excited about this offseason.
yeah, no, I think that makes the most sense. And if that midfielder is a defensive midfielder, I think you feel great about it. And then you might need a right back, depending on what you do with Chelo Wigan. You might need a left winger, depending on what you do with Robert Taylor. But that's the game plan. You're not going to blow up this roster that is already really, really good. By the way, Suarez re-signing is certainly on both of our bingo cards and in a healthy spot that we were expecting. Jordi Alba, says Janet. He is one of the decisions that we were expecting to find out about tonight, and we were going to have a conversation about. They're probably going to try and sign him to a new contract, or maybe they just have to activate the extension. I don't know, but that was something we were expecting to hear from. Thomas says, please not Neymar. He didn't even play for Al Hilal. Y'all want to use a DP spot on him. I know. I'm crazy. I'm addicted to the excitement. If he had a choice, he would go back to Barcelona, but I feel like that's too difficult now and too many bridges burned to Stancy. I don't know if that's about Neymar or Messi. But lots of people agree with you. Di Maria will be better than Neymar. Okay, I only have one other thing to talk about, and we can go back to the chat after. But we talked about potentially playing a preseason game in Brazil. We have the preseason game with Orlando City on February 14th, locked in Tampa. The first competitive game of the regular season will be either February 4th, 5th, or 6th. That will be the first leg of the first round of the CONCACAF Champions Cup. But the first game of the MLS regular season may have been spilt today. And thanks to IMCF Traveler or Battery Traveler for posting this. But I guess the parking passes for next year, the first one, February 22nd, says Inter Miami versus Columbus Crew at Chase Stadium. So, pro tip, the first game of the regular season next year may just be Saturday, February 22nd, Inter Miami versus the Columbus Crew. How you feeling about that?
That's a spicy option.
Not
Very
confirmed,
spicy option.
but Inter Miami may have accidentally spilled it.
First of all, great detective work, but that's a spicy start to the MLS season, man. I don't know what's the best time to play Columbus. This is going to be a very good game because both teams have sort of created this rivalry. Columbus fans seething because Inter Miami is now in the Club World Cup. Columbus didn't have the best playoff run. Miami didn't have the best playoff run. So that back and forth from this season, I think, is going to go into the next season as well. And it's hitting the ground running. I'm excited to see how it plays out. But we are going to be playing Columbus at a time when both teams aren't that set. And it'll be interesting to see how the first game plays out. I would always want to play Columbus when the game actually means something. So playing it on the first day of the season is, okay, fine. That's fair enough. But it's not going to have that same value, but it's still going to be a spicy game. For sure.
You think there's any chance that they fall apart?
Columbus?
Yeah.
Oh, fall apart in terms of not have a great season next season?
Yeah.
Could be. But the MLS is a long season, man. And Columbus is a well-drilled machine. As long as Wilfred Nancy's there, they'll figure it out eventually. I don't think they fall apart. They might have a drop-off in terms of their level, but they'll still be competitive, I think.
By the way, they did their roster decisions about 11 hours ago, like every MLS team was supposed to. They let Yaya Boa go, and they let Alex Maton go. Two guys that were
Maton's very surprising. Yaya Boa was kind of looking at it anyways because he hadn't played too much, but Maton's very surprising for them.
No, by the way, I could see Columbus falling apart next year. If a French team needs a coach, you could see them going after Wilfred Nancy. I could see a European club trying to poach him. And also, it's really hard to be consistently good in MLS. And I don't know. I could see it falling apart for them. And unlike, think back to this year, we had that Orlando City game, which was supposed to be a banger right away. And Orlando City fell apart for the next half of the season.
Let's not talk about Orlando City, man. They're still in the playoffs. They're doing well. Let's not talk about them, please. I think we're jinxing them if anything.
Yeah. So that would be a fun way to start the season. It's also possible Inter Miami could play a road game like on the Wednesday before the season starts, I think that Inter Miami is going to make a road trip to San Diego early on in the season just to help the new franchise sort of get a really excited fan base to the stadium and help fill those early seasons and just sell the season tickets out because it's a new franchise and they're going to want to help them out. Fun games ahead. I don't know what else you want to talk about. We can go back to the chat.
I don't know, man. Have we had any decisions yet?
No, actually, I have a couple ideas, but let's go back to the chat. Neymar is an injury-prone player. He's finessing clubs for money. Maybe re-signing Jordi Alba needs to be a priority. Absolutely, I expect to get that done without a doubt. Hope the Moz brothers and Beckham are not only for marketing this Miami team, get a real striker and a center back. I think Luis Suárez is a pretty real striker. He'll want to be playing consistently leading up to the World Cup. I think that's about Lionel Messi.
Yep.
Alba and Busquets will not grow. I agree. Heard they might go to China again to make up for last year's marketing disaster. I doubt it. They might do that the following year, but I don't think they're going to do that next year. They have a new coach. They're going to want to make everything very easy. Stancy telling me that I'm wrong, which is fine. I'm in it for the vibes right now. It's the beginning of the offseason. Yeah. Neymar would be at Club Madonna every weekend. Neymar is not a serious player. He's a gambler, and he will go out in every club in Miami. Oh, my God, I'm getting dumped on. Okay, so let's do a couple predictions. I'm going to read players that are out of options, and you're going to tell me what you think we're going to find out when we find out.
Okay, wait. Before we do that, am I doing predictions or am I doing what I would do?
Predictions.
Okay, fair. Go on.
Sorry about to sneeze. Cello Wiegand.
Goes.
You think he goes?
Goes. Okay. Sorry, guys. I've been very inconsistent with my Cello Wiegand narrative. Every podcast, I feel like I change my tune and I feel hypocritical myself. But today I feel he's going to go because I think Inter Miami is going to be very serious in terms of who they keep and who they don't. And they definitely think they're going to be able to get an upgrade for Cello Wiegand, who's less expensive and more worth the money. So I think Cello goes.
I think he should go. I'm not that convinced he's going to go.
No.
I love your inconsistency, despite the fact that absolutely nothing has changed since the last time we talked about this. Let's do Nico Freda.
Goes. He's an extra on this roster. I don't think he's going to stay.
$1 million he made this year. That is a huge amount of money that you can go get a very good player. So I think you have to go get another center back. He's on loan from Pumas. Maybe you can buy him from Pumas for very cheap. And he is a guy that you can bring back on like 400,000. I don't think that's likely to happen. And so
the thing is, even if you do bring him back, it doesn't solve a lot of Inter Miami's problems. And I think the focus in this transfer window is going to be to try and solve the problems we had last season. So, yeah, I don't think he's going to come back.
Sergei Christoph?
Gone. I think his career is now towards the end of, its run, and he's been good for us when he's played, but I think it's time for him to depart.
Miami is on Latin time. That's funny.
Yeah.
Franco Negri. This is, I think, an interesting one.
Again, on the fence with this. I have a feeling he goes, but you made some good points about why he would stay, and I could see that happening, given that he's Argentinian. You don't know if you're going to get a better backup. The thing is, I don't know if left back is considered a priority position for this leadership right now in terms of upgrading it. And if Franco Negri stays on the same contract, if he signs for even less money, perhaps, given that his role has diminished over the last season too, he might be actually worth keeping around just as a stopgap in case Jordi Alba is injured. Because let's be honest, whoever we bring in as a left back is not going to get too many chances to play.
Yeah, he played about 800 minutes this year, which isn't that money. It's not that many. You could see him coming back. They have an option for him, so he would just be on the same contract. He would probably get a little bit of a bonus for retention, but cheap player, quality player. I could also see them like taking the option and then trading him for value.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's some value there. So I actually expect them to keep him at least through tonight. And then we'll see where they go from there. Matías Rojas.
Stays.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's going to be a stay too. We re-signed Luis Suarez. What about Oscar Ustari? We haven't really talked about him. He's not under contract. He's a free agent, but he was a player for a little while.
I don't think so. I think they're going to stick with Cesar Dos Santos and Drake Calendar.
I agree, and I don't think there's really a reason to bring Ustari back. It was cool that it all made sense at the right time, but
unless they plan to dump Cesar Dos Santos, but I don't know if that's going to be the case.
Yeah, and I also think if they wanted to bring in a goalkeeper, they'll get someone better than Ustari. He just happened to be available. They had an international roster slot, so they just did it.
And he played well that one game that he did play for us. So
yes, we'll always have October 5th.
That one game, yeah.
October 5th in Toronto, right? Leo Alfonso should be back. Yannick Bright, no doubt. Dos Santos, no doubt. Ian Frey, no doubt. Ryan Saylor, lost in Sunderland.
Ryan Saylor gone, lost in Sunderland. I think they'll probably trade him.
I think they'll survive. I think they'll both be back through tonight.
But I don't think they're going to stick around once the transfer window closes. That's what I think.
We'll see. Because they're on the supplemental roster, it's a lot easier to move them than everyone else.
Yeah.
Couple interesting ones. Felipe Valencia hasn't played for the B team. I think he's going to go. He does have an option for 2025, but I think I think they just have to move on from him because he hasn't played in like 2 years. And then here's a fun one. Emerson Rodriguez, under contract through 2025. So he's under
contract.
Is
he playing right now?
Make a decision. I think he plays for somewhere in Brazil. I'm going to look it up. Not that he'll ever play for Inter Miami again. But
I love how he's still technically an Inter Miami player, right?
Vasco da Gama. Hasn't played for Inter Miami in 2 years now. But
you never know, man. You never know if he comes back or not. I don't think he comes back, honestly.
He's got 15 appearances in the Brasileiro this year, since the summer. 2 goals, 1 yellow card. That's it, man. I think once we get the decisions, there'll be a lot of talking points, but until we know what they're going to do, it's just we're just talking circles. And so maybe we should come back. Maybe we'll come back in 3 hours and talk about it. Maybe we'll come back tomorrow. Maybe we'll wait till the weekend. We'll see.
I think it's sometimes good to have these non-structured conversations as well, where we're basically talking out of our butts. So I don't mind it. I would have been a lot more happier if Inter Miami had announced their decisions already, but alas, they make us wait, so we're at their disposal, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. And what a club to be at the disposal of. Okay, last thing we should do before we close it out. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving, so it felt like a wonderful time to do a few Inter Miami thank yous, things that we're thankful for. And as a gentleman, I'll let you go first.
You know what the biggest thing I'm thankful for this season? From an Inter Miami perspective, not from a personal, selfish perspective. I'll get to that later. But from an Inter Miami perspective, I'm very thankful for having won the MLS Supporter Shield, because it means we have something to show for in this season. And if we haven't won that, it would have been a dreadful, dreadful off-season where every single one of Columbus or Orlando fans would absolutely banter us to death. So I'm glad that we won the MLS Supporter Shield to actually prove that, okay, we did something this season.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. It was the best regular season in the history of the sport in America, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thankful for all the players that came because of Tata Martino. And I'm thankful that Tata Martino brought those players. Diego Gomez was so much fun to watch. Toto Aviles can make you pull your hair out, but then you watch him on the second watch and he's a really good player. Julian Gressel, I think we've both come to really enjoy and admire. So I'm thankful for all the players that Tata Martino brought, and I'm thankful for his time as a coach. And I'm thankful that we get a new exciting chapter coming up.
Yeah. Okay. My turn. How many are we doing this, by the way? Because I want to make sure I get through all my
I don't know. We'll go until we run out.
Okay. I think I have a couple more. So I'm very thankful for one singular player, and that is Yannick Bright. I'm thankful because he was phenomenal this season. I'm thankful that we signed him in the super draft. And I'm hoping that in this super draft, we can unearth a similar gem, because what a find Yannick Bright was. And very thankful for his presence in the midfield and stopping all the transitions that we faced, because otherwise this would have been a very, very long season. So thank you, Yannick Bright, for everything you've done for this club over the last season.
I'm thankful to the owners who can drive Inter Miami fans crazy sometimes, but they also have the ambition to go do amazing things. I think that's amazing. I'm, born and raised in South Florida, and so Inter Miami became my team by default. And I'm thankful that of all of the owners that people complain are too cheap and are holding the league back and all of these other things, that we have owners that are trying to do things that other people thought were impossible. And I'm very thankful to have them, even if they drive me crazy sometimes, including tonight.
That's a bit of a backhanded compliment, but yeah, sure. Okay, this one's going to be my last one, so I'm going to make it good. I am thankful for you for coming up to me last year sometime in October and saying, hey, Saul, I have an idea. Do you want to talk about football? Do you want to talk about Inter Miami in front of 500 people? How many subscribers do we have? 400 people. And I was like, yeah, sure, let's try it. What's the worst that could happen? So I am thankful for you for suggesting this idea. I'm thankful for you for setting up the Drive Pink Dialogue. And I am thankful for every single podcast that we do where I get to fight with you on how wrong your opinions are, because I'm always on the right side, as chat can attest to.
No, along those lines, thank you for coming up with the name Drive Pink Dialogue. That was all you.
I did that, yeah.
And also, I want to thank everyone in the chat and everyone that watches, because this experience has been so fun and so endearing, and it has deepened my fandom of Inter Miami, my fandom of soccer. It has made me more appreciative of everything that goes into this sport, everything that goes into building a fan base, and everything that goes into this community. And the fact that you guys come hang out with us, and we see you guys coming back and back, it's so awesome, and I really appreciate it every single time. And part of our outro is us thanking you, because we really do appreciate it, and I want to make sure that it's said every time. But as we get into Thanksgiving and we're being thankful, I'll say it again, because it really is true, and it comes from the bottom of my heart. You guys make this so much fun for us, and it makes Inter Miami more fun. It makes the sport more fun. It makes being a sports fan more fun, and it makes life more fun. And that's because of you guys. And I really do appreciate that. So that's it. Those are our thankful Thanksgivings. And maybe we'll be back with another episode in an hour when Inter Miami drops a late night roster drop. But until that happens, guys, thanks for being with us. Thanks for being in the chat as always. And I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday and a lovely night. And we will see you guys next time. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this, and have a wonderful day.